I always thought Daniel was just a dependable man who showed up when I needed someone to babysit Lily or fix the heater. I never loved him, not in the way a woman should love her husband, but I married him anyway because, well, it was convenient. He was quiet, responsible, and made no demands. 10 years ago, I was still licking my wounds from being dumped by my high school sweetheart, Jason Walker, when Daniel moved in next door with his quiet smile and gentle eyes. He watched over Lily like she was his own, never once asking for anything in return, not even a "thank you." And Emily Parker, the ambitious executive who had no time for love, let him into my life like I was hiring a full-time nanny. I didn't realize, or maybe I just refused to admit, that he was already becoming the backbone of our home. Every morning, Lily would run to him with messy hair and sleepy eyes shouting, "Daddy Daniel, pick me up," and every time, he'd kneel down, arms wide open, like it was the highlight of his life. I thought I was being generous letting him stay. I mean, I gave him a house, a family, even my name. But I never gave him my heart. Not really. Jason came back a year ago, still looking like the man who broke me but also the man who haunted my dreams. He said he missed me. Said he regretted everything. I believed him. How stupid of me. I didn't tell Daniel at first. I knew I didn't have to. He always knew. He had this way of reading my silence like it was screaming at him. Still, he stayed. He stayed when I forgot his birthday, stayed when I skipped our anniversary dinner to meet Jason, stayed when Lily stopped calling him dad and started calling Jason my real father. I don't know when I became so cruel. Maybe I always was. On Daniel's 10th anniversary living in our house, Lily threw a fit about wanting a new iPad. He told her no. She screamed, called him cheap, said Jason would have bought her 3. I slapped him in front of her. Not hard, but enough. Enough to shatter something. That night, he didn't come home. He sent a short message, "I'll be gone for a while. Don't wait up." I didn't even bother replying. The next day, Lily's birthday party was all set at Willow and Pine. Jason showed up, charming as ever, with a smile that made my knees weak. Everything was perfect until Lily ate the chocolate cake. Her face turned red. She started wheezing. It was a nightmare. Jason screamed, accusing Daniel of bringing a peanut-laced cake when he knew Lily was allergic. Guests were staring, whispering, filming. I stood there, frozen, as Jason pushed Daniel against the wall, yelling that he tried to kill our daughter. I didn't stop him. I didn't speak up. Daniel just looked at me, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw something in his eyes that terrified me. It wasn't sadness. It was nothing. Cold, empty nothing. He left without a word. I didn't even try to call him. 2 days later, the police found his coat and phone by the edge of Lake Haven. Suicide note. Just one line on his phone, "I'm going home." They never found a body. Just footprints in the snow, leading to the icy water. At first, I was numb. Then angry. How dare he leave like that? How dare he make me look like the bad guy? Then Lily cried herself to sleep 3 nights in a row. She asked, "Is Daddy Daniel in heaven now?" And that's when it hit me. I broke the only man who ever truly loved us. Jason vanished after that party. Disappeared like smoke. Rumor said he got caught embezzling from one of his startups. I didn't care anymore. My world fell apart the moment Daniel left. Not because I missed his chores or his dinners. But because I started remembering the little things. The way he never let Lily sleep without tucking her in. The way he placed his hand gently on my lower back in crowded rooms to guide me through. The way he never raised his voice, even when I deserved it. I found his journal hidden in the back of the closet. Every page was filled with drawings of our family. Stick figurism, him, and Lily with big smiles. Under one, he wrote, "Even if I'm just a substitute, I'm happy to be here." I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. 10 years, and I never once asked him how he felt. I just assumed he was fine, like a piece of furniture that would always be there. But he wasn't fine. He was drowning in silence, in loneliness, in rejection, and I never noticed. A week after the funeral, a strange envelope arrived. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photo, Daniel in a white button-up, holding hands with a beautiful woman and a little boy with his eyes. They were smiling. Not posing, genuinely smiling. Like a real family. Like he'd found his own heaven. I flipped the photo over. One sentence was scrawled in his handwriting: "Please don't look for me. I found home." That's when I realized, the system didn't just take him away. It set him free. And now, I'm the one left behind, trapped in the perfect life I thought I wanted, with the perfect man I thought I loved who was never really mine. Because I threw away the real thing. With my own hands. I thought grief would make me a better person. I thought losing Daniel would wake me up, shake me out of my selfishness, but all it did was expose the rot I'd buried under 10 years of convenience. After the funeral, if you could even call it that, since there was no body, I tried to move on. Or at least pretend I had. I kept the house spotless, kept Lily's schedule full with ballet and violin and SAT prep, told everyone I was doing okay, with that half smile I wore like armor. But I was unraveling. Quietly, slowly, like a silk ribbon being tugged loose. I couldn't bring myself to touch his side of the bed, so I just slept on the couch most nights, staring at the ceiling and wondering what I would have done if I had just turned around during that party, just once, and said, "Stop. He's my husband." But I didn't. And that silence had become a monster in the room. Lily never talked about him. Not even once. It was like she'd blocked the entire decade from her memory. Sometimes, I caught her scrolling through her phone, looking at old pictures she secretly saved. But the moment I tried to ask, she'd shut down. So I gave up. Again. One night, I found myself opening Daniel's journal. I had read the first few pages already, but this time, I flipped deeper. Page 47. Today she looked at me like I was a stranger. I don't blame her. I've always been a placeholder. Page 59. Lily cried because Jason forgot her birthday. I bought her a cake, but she told me not to act like her dad. So I just smiled and lit the candles. Page 72. Emily said I was too soft. Maybe I am. But what's wrong with loving someone completely? Each line felt like a knife. And the worst part? I didn't even remember saying half those things. That's how little I paid attention. That's how easy it was to hurt someone when you assumed they'd always stay. Then, 3 months after his death, the message came. It was a simple email. No subject. Just an attachment, a short video. My hands shook as I clicked it. Daniel was standing in a garden I didn't recognize, under sunlight that felt too warm, too real. A woman stood beside him, Olivia Bennett. I didn't know her, but she looked familiar, like someone I once passed in a grocery store and never thought of again. She was laughing, and he was glowing. Not smiling politely. Not that exhausted kindness I'd seen for 10 years. He was radiant. Like someone who had finally come home. "Say hi to the camera, Lucas," Olivia giggled, and a little boy ran into frame, crashing into Daniel's legs. He scooped him up effortlessly. "Say hi to Mommy's friend," Daniel said, waving at the screen. The video ended there. I stared at the screen, stunned, heart thudding. Lucas. His son. He had a new family. A real one. And he didn't want me to know. But someone did. Someone sent that video to hurt me, or maybe to wake me up. Either way, it worked. I went numb. Then angry. Furious. At Daniel. At Olivia. At the entire world. I threw the laptop across the room. It hit the floor with a hollow thud and the screen shattered. And then I cried. Not the quiet tears I'd been leaking every night. I screamed. I sobbed until my throat burned and my lungs seized. Because it wasn't just about losing him. It was about never really having him at all. He gave me everything, and I gave him scraps. And now he had taken what was left of his heart and built a life without me. A better one. A free one. I started dreaming about him after that. In those dreams, he never spoke. He just stood across a frozen lake, watching me with that same unreadable gaze he had the night he left. Every time I tried to run to him, the ice would crack, and I'd fall through, choking on freezing water. When I woke up, I'd find myself clinging to a pillow soaked in tears. One morning, I opened Lily's backpack to slip in her lunchbox and found a crumpled envelope tucked inside. My name was written on the front in Daniel's handwriting. I froze. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out and unfolded the page inside. I know I'll never be enough for you. And that's okay. But I hope one day you'll understand what it means to be seen not for what you lack, but for what you give. Goodbye, Emily. Take care of Lily. She's better than both of us. I pressed the paper to my chest, knees giving out beneath me, collapsing on the floor of my kitchen like I'd been shot. That was when it truly sank in. He never stopped loving me. He just stopped waiting for me to notice. That afternoon, I took Lily to the park, the same one Daniel used to bring her to when she was small. I watched her run ahead, her ponytail swinging, and all I could see was 1,000 tiny moments I'd missed. The way he used to braid her hair when I was too busy. The time he built her a cardboard spaceship for her third-grade science project. The nights he stayed up sewing her recital costumes because I couldn't be bothered. I had always thought I was the glue holding this family together. Turns out, I was just the one holding the scissors. That night, I searched for Daniel. Not out of hope, out of desperation. I scoured social media, emailed every contact I could think of, even paid a private investigator. All roads led to nothing. Like he had vanished off the face of the earth. Until I found a Reddit thread titled, "Ever lost someone to another world?" It sounded crazy. Like sci-fi nonsense. But the post described a man who had lived 10 years in a simulated reality for a mission, only to return to his real life afterward with memories intact, but love gone cold. I stared at the comments, heart pounding. The username that posted it? DC_reborn. Daniel Carter. My Daniel. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. And then I replied, "If you remember me, come back. Please. Just once." He never answered. But the post disappeared 3 hours later. That was the moment I knew he saw it. He read it. And he chose not to respond. And honestly, he had every right. The day I got the invitation was the day I realized the universe wasn't done punishing me. A creamy white envelope, thick and expensive, addressed in flawless calligraphy to Emily Parker and Lily Parker, arrived in our mailbox like a slap in the face. I almost didn't open it. I should have known better. But I did. Inside was a glossy card with elegant gold lettering. Daniel Carter and Olivia Bennett cordially invite you to celebrate the christening of their son, Lucas Carter. The date? 1 year exactly since Daniel vanished into the icy water at Lake Haven. 1 year since the day I stood in our living room, holding his final note, pretending I wasn't falling apart while Lily whispered, "Is Daddy coming home?" for the 100th time. And now, they wanted us to come celebrate the life they built after leaving us behind. My hands were shaking. My vision blurred. I didn't even realize I had crumpled the invitation until Lily walked in and asked, "What's that?" I hid it. Lied. Said it was junk mail. But the truth sat like lead in my chest. I wasn't angry that he moved on. I was angry that I had been erased so completely, so easily, like I had never mattered. Not as a wife, not as a partner, not even as the woman who watched him die. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the hallway, replaying every conversation we ever had. The things I never said. The way I dismissed his quiet pain. I should have fought for him. I should have screamed at that party, clawed at Jason's face, defended Daniel when he was being falsely accused. But I had stood still. Silent. Frozen by pride and fear. I didn't deserve closure. But Lily did. So I packed our bags, bought 2 train tickets to San Francisco, and told her we were going to visit an old friend. She didn't ask questions. Not until we were standing in front of a modern house nestled on a quiet hilltop, with white brick walls and blue hydrangeas blooming along the walkway. "Where are we?" she whispered, clutching her backpack. "Somewhere you used to belong," I said. The party was already in full swing. Guests in tailored suits and flowy dresses wandered the backyard, sipping champagne and laughing beneath fairy lights. I spotted Olivia first, beautiful as ever, wearing a pale blue dress that matched the hydrangeas, her hair tucked behind one ear as she cradled a baby boy in her arms. Lucas. He had Daniel's eyes. And then I saw him. Daniel. Standing beside her, relaxed, content, wearing a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on me. For a second, everything stopped. The breeze, the music, my breath. His expression didn't change. No shock. No joy. Just calm recognition. Like I was a distant memory passing through a dream he no longer wanted to revisit. I wanted to run. To cry. To scream at him for looking at me like that. But Lily stepped forward before I could say a word. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, almost broken. Olivia froze. The baby whimpered. Daniel turned fully toward us, his face unreadable. "Lily," he said quietly. That was it. No warmth. No open arms. Just a name. A memory. "Why didn't you say goodbye?" Lily choked. "Why didn't you come back for me?" Olivia looked at Daniel, confusion and hurt flickering in her eyes. "You never told me she was coming," she said. "I didn't know," he replied, his voice low. "This wasn't part of the plan. I stepped in then." "What plan, Daniel? To ghost your old life and pretend we never existed?" He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in a year. "You made it very clear I didn't," he said evenly. 10 years, Emily. I waited for you to see me. You never did." "That's not true," I snapped. I didn't know how." "You didn't try," he said. "I gave you everything. And when I needed you the most, you stood there and let them destroy me. You didn't ask questions. You didn't fight. You let them call me a monster in front of our daughter, and you said nothing." "I was scared," I whispered. "So was I," he said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "But I still stayed. Until I couldn't anymore." Lily started sobbing. Olivia stepped forward, trying to usher us away gently, but Lily clung to Daniel's arm, crying, "Please don't leave me again." And for a moment, I saw something flicker in him: pain, hesitation, guilt. But he gently pulled her hands away. "You'll be okay," he said softly. "You're strong. And your mom, she's learning. She'll do better now." "Do you still love her?" Lily asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at me, then at Olivia, who was holding Lucas protectively, her expression tight with worry. "I did," he said finally. "With everything I had. But some loves die quietly, and you don't even realize until they're gone. That's when I knew. There was no going back. No undoing the years of neglect. No fixing what I broke. I had lost him. Not to Olivia. Not to time. But to myself. To my own blindness." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know that doesn't change anything. But I am." He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Thank you for saying that." We left without saying goodbye. I didn't look back. I couldn't. On the train ride home, Lily leaned against me and whispered, "Do you think he'll forget us?" I kissed the top of her head. "No," I said. "But he doesn't belong to us anymore. And maybe that's okay." She cried quietly into my jacket, and I held her tighter than I ever had before. Because this time, I wasn't going to miss the moments. I wasn't going to sleepwalk through someone's love until it turned into silence. And I swore to myself, I'd never let her feel like a placeholder again. I used to think regret was a momentous single shattering realization that everything you wanted had already slipped through your fingers. But it's not. It's a slow burn. A daily ache. Waking up every morning and remembering that you lost something you didn't even know how to hold. After we left San Francisco, I went through the motions. Packed Lily's lunch. Walked her to school. Smiled politely at the neighbors. But I wasn't really living, I was haunting my own life. Everywhere I turned, Daniel was there, like a ghost stitched into the corners of my memory. Every jacket I folded, every tea I brewed, every soft-spoken "good night" I whispered into the hallway. It didn't matter that I had finally said, "I'm sorry." He didn't need that anymore. He had a new life. A real one. With a woman who saw him. A son who looked up at him with the kind of love I had taken for granted. But there was still one thing I couldn't let go of: Lily. I had let her down just like I had him. Let her believe she wasn't enough. Let her believe her worth was conditional, depending on which man showed up. She deserved better. So I poured everything I had into being present. I showed up at her practices. Sat through 3 hours of a school play where she had 2 lines and forgot one. I stopped looking at my phone every 5 minutes. I started listening. And for a while, it helped. For a while, I thought maybe I was healing. Until I found the box. It was hidden in the back of the closet, behind a pile of old winter coats. Lily had been digging for her favorite scarf when she yanked it out and said, "Mom, what's this?" I froze. It was Daniel's box. The one he always kept locked. The one I never bothered asking about. Inside were photos. Notes. A thumb drive. A worn leather journal with "the program" stamped faintly on the first page. I didn't understand what I was reading at first. Entries written in cryptic language about mission thresholds, emotion indexes, departure protocols. But then I saw the dates. Every major moment in our life: Lily's adoption, our wedding, my big promotion, documented in precise detail with analysis of my emotional response. He hadn't just been my husband. He had been part of something else. Something not of this world. A system. A simulation. A mission. And we had been his assignment. My blood ran cold. At the very back of the journal, scribbled in rushed handwriting, was one last note: "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if I'm gone, it means I completed my mission. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to forgive me. But know this: I stayed longer than I should have, not because of the program, but because I loved you. I chose you. Even when you didn't choose me back." That's when I broke again. Because even in leaving, even in dying, even in disappearing into another world, Daniel was still the one saying, "I love you," while I had been silent for 10 years. I took the thumb drive and plugged it into my laptop. There were videos, hundreds of them. Clips of us together. Me, laughing at something stupid he said. Lily asleep in his lap. Quiet moments at the kitchen table. None of them posed. All of them raw. Real. One stood out. It was labeled, "Final Log." I clicked it. Daniel's face appeared on screen, weary but calm. "Mission complete," he began, but then he paused, like the words stuck in his throat. "But it doesn't feel like completion. It feels like abandonment. They'll erase this memory file, but I'm saving a copy just in case. In case I ever want to remember what love looked like, even if it was never mine to keep." I don't know how long I sat there, sobbing into my hands. The world felt both enormous and unbearably small. A cosmic joke where I was the punchline and he was the exit wound. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, if he could leave this world through a system, could I go through it too? Was that even possible? Or had I lost him not just across a city, but across dimensions? The question haunted me until I found the subreddit again, the one where DC_reborn had posted. It was gone, but I remembered some of the thread titles, and after digging through caches and archives for hours, I found it. Buried deep in a web forum no longer moderated. And one reply stood out. A user named O_Bennett had posted, "The program can't be reopened unless the emotional bond reaches critical reactivation. That's the rule." And beneath it, another reply, "But what if someone new wants to go in?" The answer? You'd need to overwrite your origin. Give up your place here. Become a replacement. A chill ran down my spine. Become a replacement. Like Daniel had been. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to sacrifice not out of duty, but out of choice. I wanted to see him. Just once. To say what I never did. Even if he didn't forgive me. Even if he had moved on. So I started writing. Every night, a journal entry addressed to him. "Today, Lily told me I make the best pancakes now. You used to say I burnt the batter because I rushed everything. I'm trying to slow down. I really am. Today I wore your old sweater to the grocery store. The cashier said it looked cozy. I didn't tell her it smelled like the life I threw away. Today I missed you again. But not the memory of you. The real you. The one who never stopped choosing us." I wrote until the journal was full. Then one night, I opened my laptop and whispered, "If this system is real, let me in." And the screen flickered. Once. Twice. Then a prompt appeared, "Are you ready to overwrite?" I clicked yes. The moment I clicked yes, the air around me changed, like a vacuum had sucked all the noise out of the world, like the universe had exhaled and forgotten to inhale again, and then everything went dark, not the kind of darkness you feel behind closed eyes, but something deeper, heavier, like I was sinking into ink and silence, and then there was light, sharp, sterile, blinding white light, and a voice, mechanical yet eerily calm, echoed in my ears, "System override initiated, subject identity. Emily Parker authorization, replacement candidate initializing re-entry point," and before I could even gasp or scream or feel afraid, I was falling, weightless, formless, not through space but through memory, through time, through regret, and when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my bedroom anymore, I wasn't even sure I had a body, but I was standing there floating, or existing inside a version of our old home. Only it wasn't quite right, the walls too clean, the air too still, like someone had tried to recreate my life using data and memory but hadn't accounted for the mess, the scent, the warmth, and then I saw him, Daniel, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his hands, looking just like he used to, hoodie sleeves pushed up, hair still damp from a shower, steam rising from the mug, except he didn't see me, didn't look up, and I realized I wasn't really there, not yet, I was watching a recording, a replay. A moment stored by the system, and the voice returned, this time softer. Almost kind. To gain access, you must rebuild emotional resonance, choose a day, and suddenly scenes began to flicker around me like old film reels spinning out of order. Our wedding day, Lily's first steps, the night Daniel made soup when I had the flu, the argument in the rain where I told him I never asked him to stay and I reached out, almost without thinking, and touched the moment where he sat outside Lily's room reading her a bedtime story, his voice low, his arm around her tiny shoulders. And the scene swallowed me whole, plunging me back into that night as if I had never left it, only this time, I wasn't watching, I was in it, real, breathing, heart pounding against my ribs like it knew this wasn't supposed to happen. And Daniel looked up from the book, startled, eyes locking on mine like he saw a ghost, and maybe he did, because I wasn't the Emily from that timeline, I was me, older, broken, desperate. And I didn't know what to say, didn't know if I was allowed to speak, but he whispered my name, Emily, like he was afraid the sound of it would shatter the moment, and I nodded, tears already slipping down my cheeks, and said the only thing I could manage, I'm sorry. And for a second, he didn't move, didn't blink, and then Lily stirred beside him and murmured, Daddy, don't go, and I nearly lost it, because I knew how this night ended. I remembered that he'd sat there long after she fell asleep, staring at the wall, wondering if he should pack his bags, wondering if I'd even notice, and now I was here, intruding on it, rewriting it, maybe ruining it. And Daniel stood slowly, gently lifting Lily off his lap and laying her in bed before covering her with the blanket, then turning back to me with a look I couldn't read, not sadness, not anger, something more raw, more guarded, and he asked, what is this? And I told him the truth, because what else was there left to lose? I said, I came back for you, I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't move on, I couldn't live with the version of me who let you die thinking you were never enough. And his breath caught, his knuckles widening around the chair, and he said, this isn't real, but I shook my head and stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, like getting too close might collapse the entire system, and whispered, it doesn't have to be real for me to mean it, and something shifted in his eyes, something familiar and terrifying, hope. And I hated myself for giving it back to him, because I didn't know if I could stay, didn't know if the system would let me stay, but I knew I had to say everything I'd never said, so I did. I told him how I noticed the way he always remembered to leave the bathroom light on for me because he knew I was afraid of the dark, how he'd pick all the tomatoes out of Lily's pasta even when she was too old to ask, how I watched him fall apart in silence and said nothing because I was too proud to admit I needed him more than I wanted to, how I loved him not in the way that shouts, but in the way that lingers. And he listened, quietly, no interruptions, no judgment, just eyes locked on mine like he was memorizing every syllable. And when I was done, he asked, voice barely above a whisper, why now? And I answered, because I finally saw you and because I finally saw myself, and that broke him. I could see it, the way his shoulders trembled, the way his jaw clenched like he was holding in everything he hadn't let out for years, and he said, I waited so long for this. And I said, I know, and I'm sorry it took losing you for me to understand. And then the system shimmered around us, a soft hum rising like the world was rebooting, and the voice returned, emotional threshold achieved, temporary access granted, countdown initiated, and I felt it then, the tether pulling me back, the cruel limit of this mercy. And I turned to Daniel, heart splintering, and said, I don't have long. And he reached out, touching my cheek with a gentleness that shattered me all over again, and said, then let's not waste it. And for those few minutes, we existed together, real and unreal, past and present, and it was more than I deserved, but exactly what I needed. And as the countdown reached 0, he kissed my forehead and whispered, thank you for coming back, and I whispered, thank you for waiting, and then the world dissolved. I thought the system would let me remember him like a warm dream, that I'd wake up back in my bed, pillow soaked, heart aching but a little lighter after saying goodbye, but that's not what happened, because when the world dissolved and the countdown ended, I opened my eyes to a sunrise I didn't recognize, to birds I'd never heard before, to a room I had never slept in but somehow knew, soft gray walls, a mobile with stars and moons gently spinning above a crib, the faint scent of chamomile and cotton in the air. And when I sat up, startled, breath caught in my throat, I saw the photo frame on the nightstand, and my heart stopped. It was us, me and Daniel and Lily, except Lily was older, taller, smiling between us like she had never stopped calling him Dad, like he had never left, and next to her was a boy Lucas, but not the Lucas I'd glimpsed in videos. This one was a toddler, and he looked like both of us. And that's when I knew, the system hadn't just let me visit, it had rewritten everything, not just in his world, but in mine too. And I stumbled to the mirror, half afraid I wouldn't recognize myself, but there I was, Emily, just changed, softer around the edges, lighter somehow, like a version of me that had learned sooner, that had loved louder, that had fought harder to keep what mattered. And my hands trembled as I picked up the journal on the nightstand, the same one I had filled in my world. Only this time the handwriting wasn't just mine, it was his too, pages filled with notes between us, little love letters, grocery lists scribbled with hearts, entries about family movie nights and homemade cookies that burned because Lily insisted on doing it, like Daddy. And I collapsed onto the bed, heart pounding, head spinning, trying to understand what the system had done. And then the door opened, and he was there, Daniel, holding a sleepy Lucas in his arms, hair messy, wearing an old college hoodie I used to tease him about. And when he saw me, he smiled, not that polite smile I used to mistake for happiness, but a full, wide grin like I was his whole world wrapped in morning light. And he said, "You're up early," and I couldn't speak, I just stared, overwhelmed. And he walked over, gently placing Lucas down beside me, and whispered, "He wanted to snuggle with you, said you smell like pancakes." And I laughed, a choked, tearful laugh, and he kissed my forehead without hesitation, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and said, "I had the weirdest dream last night. You left and came back." And I looked into his eyes, my voice barely steady, and replied, "Maybe it wasn't a dream." And he paused, something flickering in his gaze, like an echo of another life, another timeline. But he didn't press, he just said, "I'm glad you're here." And I nodded, whispering, "Me too." And we sat there, our family tangled together in soft blankets and early light. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a ghost inside my own life. I felt real, whole, rooted. And as the sun climbed higher, Lily burst into the room in her unicorn pajamas, jumping on the bed and yelling, "Happy birthday, Mommy." And Daniel laughed and said, "We made you something," and they disappeared into the kitchen, only to return 5 minutes later with a tray that held a lopsided pancake cake and a cup of way too sweet coffee. And I cried again, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming peace of having been given another chance, a real one, not borrowed or simulated or stolen, but one I earned by facing everything I had ignored. And later that night, after presents and candles and too much sugar, Daniel and I stood out on the porch, watching the stars appear, and I asked him, "Do you ever feel like we were meant to miss each other?" And he took my hand and said, "We did miss each other, but only long enough to know how lucky we are now." And I leaned into him, breathing in the scent of home soap, sleep, something safe, and whispered, "Thank you for waiting." And he smiled and said, "Thank you for coming back." And I knew that even if the system disappeared tomorrow, even if none of this could be explained, it wouldn't matter, because the story wasn't about time travel or redemption arcs or alternate universes. It was about us, about a girl who took too long to see the man who had always been there, and a man who chose to love her anyway. About a daughter who got both her parents back, and a little boy who never knew what it meant to be unloved. And maybe, just maybe, about a future that didn't need fixing anymore, just living.